Lilith, destroyed. Real name, unknown. Occupation, adventuress. Identity, until recent years her existence was unknown to the general public. Lately, after regaining her own body, Lilith appeared publicly, but without revealing that she was a vampire. Legal status, none until recent years. After regaining her body, she obtained American citizenship with the help of forged documents. Former aliases, Angel O'Hara, Lilith Drake. Place of birth, Castle Dracula, Wallachia, Transylvania, Romania. Place of death, somewhere in Transylvania, Romania. Known survivors, Frank Drake, descendant of her father and his second wife, Domini, her father's third wife, Janus, half-brother. Group affiliation, none. First appearance, Giant-Sized Chillers number 1. Final appearance, Doctor Strange number 62. History. Lilith was the daughter of Vlad Dracula, who was the son of the former voivode, or prince, of the Romanian Principality of Wallachia, and who later became the notorious vampire Dracula. See Dracula. And of Dracula's first wife, Zofia, a noblewoman of the Hungarian court. Dracula wed Zofia unwillingly sometime between the years 1451 and 1456 A.D., doing so solely because the marriage had been arranged many years before by his late father. Lilith was born within a year of the marriage. 1 year after the wedding, Dracula ordered Zofia to take Lilith and leave him forever, or else he would have her impaled. Dracula intended that she and Lilith would live out the rest of their lives in humiliating poverty. Zofia gave Lilith to an old gypsy woman named Gretchen to raise, and then committed suicide. In 1459, Dracula was transformed into a vampire by the gypsy Leanda. In revenge, Dracula murdered many gypsies, including Gretchen's son Arni. Gretchen then took her own vengeance by casting a spell that transformed the child Lilith into the adult vampiress Lilith. Gretchen's spell made Lilith immune to the effects that sunlight and religious talisman have on other vampires, and Lilith did not need to enter a coma-like trance during the day as other vampires did. Moreover, Gretchen's enchantment was such that if Lilith were killed, her spirit would enter the body of an innocent woman who wanted her father dead. Gretchen intended that Lilith be Dracula's eternal nemesis. In her spell, she stated that Lilith would continue to exist on Earth until Dracula was finally destroyed. Lilith's motivation throughout the centuries of her existence was to destroy Dracula in retaliation for his abandonment of her and for the death of her mother. At first, Lilith attacked humans for their blood indiscriminately, driven by the vampire's animalistic lusts. Eventually, however, she learned to control her bloodlust to a large degree and chose, usually, to attack only those humans whom she believed were evil enough to deserve such a fate. So it was that Lilith came to want to punish Dracula for all the harm he had wreaked on innocent people over the centuries as well. After centuries of battling her father, Lilith and Dracula reached a truce about a century ago and agreed never to see each other again. A little over 30 years ago, however, they met again at the estate of Quincy Harker, Dracula's longtime nemesis, on the night that Harker's wife Elizabeth killed herself from fear of Dracula. That same night, Harker took his revenge by killing Lilith. Lilith's spirit wandered through the British Isles for over 3 decades in search of an innocent woman who wanted her father dead. Finally, one night in Northern Ireland, a Catholic named Martin O'Hara learned that his daughter Angel had secretly married a Protestant named Ted Hannigan a year before and was now pregnant by him. Martin O'Hara first struck Angel and then hit Hannigan, who struck his head so hard on falling that he died. At that moment, Angel felt a murderous hatred of her father, and Lilith's spirit entered into her and transformed her body into Lilith's own vampiric form. Lilith was now in control of the body, and she killed Martin O'Hara. From then on, Lilith's spirit resided in Angel's body, sometimes influencing Angel's actions without her knowledge, and frequently taking full possession of Angel's body, transforming it into a duplicate of her own. When Lilith gave full control back to Angel, Angel's body would transform back to its original state, and Angel's consciousness would reawaken with no memory of Lilith's actions. Angel O'Hara never learned that she shared her body with Lilith's spirit. She only knew that she frequently suffered blackouts which sometimes lasted for hours. These were the times that Lilith was in full control. Weary of the British Isles, Lilith induced Angel to move to New York City's Greenwich Village, where Angel came to live happily with a young writer named Martin Gold. Lilith eventually tired of having to share her existence with another person, however, and sought out Victor Benzel, a gypsy who was the descendant of Gretchen and the heir to much of her occult knowledge. Benzel performed mystical ceremonies which resulted in Angel and Lilith each possessing a separate body of her own. Angel returned home under a spell that prevented her from having any memory of Lilith or the rituals. Lilith departed for Castle Dracula to have a final showdown with her father. After a fierce battle, Dracula finally bared his chest to Lilith and dared her to plunge a stake through his heart. Lilith, to her own astonishment, found that she could not. Dracula taunted her by saying that Gretchen's spell had decreed that Lilith would be his nemesis until he was destroyed, and that she could not be his eternal adversary unless Gretchen had made her incapable of actually destroying him. Lilith refused to accept Dracula's reasoning. It remains unclear whether Dracula or Lilith was correct. Apparently, Lilith lost track of Dracula after this encounter. Although she still longed to destroy him if she ever located him again, she also began to travel to enjoy her newfound independent existence. In a private joke, she adopted the surname Drake, the last name of Dracula's descendant and nemesis Frank Drake, for legal purposes. She finally settled in a villa in the south of France, where she finally achieved a certain inner peace. She was there when Doctor Strange and various allies cast a spell utilizing the so-called Montesi formula from the Darkhold. See, Dracula, vampires, which destroyed all vampires throughout the world. Height, 6 feet. Weight, 125 pounds. Eyes, red. Hair, black. Powers. Lilith had all of the standard powers of a vampire, but on a level far greater than any known vampire except Dracula, and possibly equal even to his. She could lift, press 1,100 pounds, hypnotize humans by staring into their eyes for at least 3 seconds, transform herself into a bat, transform herself wholly or partially into mist, control the weather, and command animals such as rats, mice, bats, wolves, and dogs. Lilith did not need to fall into a coma-like trance during the day as other vampires do, and hence had no dependence on contact with her native soil. She was not repelled or harmed by the presence of religious talismen, and could even wield them against vampires herself. She was immune to garlic. Any injury that she received short of actually having a part of her body cut off would heal within seconds, and even dismemberment could not truly kill her. Lilith could be killed with a wooden stake through the heart or with silver, but her spirit would then eventually enter the body of an innocent woman who wanted her father to be dead and could transform that body into a duplicate of her own. Lilith could then regain a body of her own through mystical rituals. Unlike other vampires, Lilith was not dependent on ingesting human blood for sustenance. She did savor its taste, however, and obtained it by biting the neck of a human victim with her 2 fangs and sucking his or her blood. Simultaneously, she deposited an enzyme in her victim's bloodstream which, if the victim did not die immediately, would add to his or her weakness due to loss of blood and would make him or her susceptible to Lilith's hypnotic commands, including those transmitted by long-range telepathy. The victim would also develop a perverse erotic fixation on Lilith. Upon dying, the victim would return to physical existence as a vampire 3 nights later. The vampire created by Lilith would have all the standard powers and vulnerabilities of a vampire. Hence, for example, although Lilith was not harmed by sunlight, this vampire would be.